I didn't mean to hear her say that. Not like that. Not with the door closed. But I'll get to that. It started 2 weeks ago, in the back office of a half-dead auto shop on Sycamore, where the printer jammed every other day and someone always left their lunch to rot in the break room fridge. Not exactly the place you'd expect something to shift inside you. I was supposed to be helping her with the shop's busted website, just a favor for her son, Aaron. He said she was bad with tech. But I didn't see that. I saw someone who didn't have time for BS. Someone who handed me a mug of burnt coffee, said, "You'll live," and kept reading invoices like her neck didn't ache and the fan wasn't broken and the light flickered like hell over her desk. Her name's Lena, Ms. Hartley technically, mid-40s, sharp jaw, voice like she used to sing before life roughed it out of her. I knew her in the background kind of way as Aaron's mom, the one who worked too much, came to college recitals in oil-stained jeans and left early. But in that cramped office it was different. More contained, maybe. She sat across from me, one hand on a chipped mousepad, the other curled around her mug, watching the screen while I explained domain hosting like it meant something. Every now and then, she'd hum low under her breath. Not a tune, just acknowledgement, approval, or maybe boredom. Couldn't tell. Then, halfway through me trying to show her how to log into the back end, her hand brushed mine on the desk. Barely, but it was enough to stop my brain mid-sentence. She didn't move it right away. I didn't either. And for 1 second, one long, stalling second, the air got thick. She looked up at me, slow, not startled, not smiling, just there, present, like something had flickered behind her eyes. I said something dumb, like, sorry, and pulled my hand back like it burned. She just gave the small smile, more breath than lips, then turned back to the screen like it hadn't happened. But it had. That moment felt off-script. Not planned, not polite, just real. I stayed an extra 20 minutes that day. She didn't ask me to, but she didn't tell me to leave either. When I finally stood to go, she said, "You're good at this." "Thanks," I said, hand on the door. And then, she looked up from her seat, eyes level with mine, and added, "I mean it." There was something weighted in her tone. Not flirtatious, not motherly, just honest. I don't know what made me pause, but I did. Half in the doorway, half waiting. That's when she stood, walked over, and closed the door behind me, softly, then said, "I've been waiting for this." My heart did that awful, stupid thing, the trip, the stall, the noise in your chest when your brain can't find context fast enough. But before I could speak, before I could even breathe, her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at it, stepped back. "I'll see you Thursday," she said casually, like nothing had changed, like she didn't just throw my entire balance off with 5 words. I walked home that night slower than usual, didn't even put in my headphones. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. Thursday came too fast. I told myself not to read into it, the door, the words, the look, but telling yourself not to think about something is a good way to think about it more. She'd texted that morning, "Bring your laptop, and patience." No emojis. Just Lena. I showed up at the shop around 5. After hours, the garage lights off, front gates locked, only her car out front. The kind of quiet that feels deliberate. Inside, the office smelled like coffee that had been reheated one too many times. She sat behind the desk, sleeves rolled up, a pen between her fingers, squinting at a stack of invoices like they'd personally offended her. "You're late," she said, not looking up. 2 minutes, I replied, setting my laptop down. Exactly, but there was no edge to her voice. If anything, she sounded tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the other kind. I started booting up while she moved around the room, fixing things that didn't need fixing. Realigning papers, closing drawers gently, checking her phone and then locking it again. "You all right?" I asked casually. She stopped, nodded once. Long week. Then added, quieter. Sorry if I'm not exactly sparkling company. There was something in her tone that made me look up. She wasn't meeting my eyes. She wore a thin silver bracelet on her right wrist. I'd never noticed it before. Her nails were chipped, like she'd given up keeping them nice. One of the rings on her finger looked too loose, spinning when she moved. I watched her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. A nervous habit. First time I'd seen her not composed. You don't have to be anything, I said. That made her pause. She looked at me, and for a second, something cracked. Not visibly, just a shift. The kind of shift that only shows if you're looking closely enough. Then, just as quick, it was gone. She smiled, or tried to. Don't go getting all sentimental on me, college boy. I laughed, mostly to cover the ache in her words. Wasn't planning on it. We worked in quiet for a while. The screen glowed between us. Her shoulder brushed mine once when she leaned over to point something out. She apologized without looking at me. When she laughed, low, sudden, at some dumb typo on the screen, it hit different. Not because of what was funny, but because I hadn't heard her laugh like that before. Like it slipped out. Like it surprised her too. Near the end, I handed her a pen. Our fingers touched again. Light, careless. But this time she flinched. Just slightly. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't. And that silence felt louder than words. The rain started while I was still inside. Not dramatic movie rain. Just a steady, soaking kind that makes you lean into your jacket and curse the lack of an umbrella. I didn't think it'd storm, I said, peering out the dusty front window of the shop. Lena didn't look up from her folder. You live 10 minutes away. You'll survive. I lingered by the window anyway, not moving. I think she knew why. It was after 9. We'd finished updating the site an hour ago. Could've, should've left. But she hadn't said I needed to, and I wasn't ready to step out into cold air and clarity. She finally closed the folder and leaned back in her chair, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Her eyes looked heavier than usual. Not just tired, weighed down. You hungry? She asked suddenly. I blinked. Yeah, actually. I've got leftovers in the back. Chinese. Unless you're one of those meal prep boys. I smiled. I live on microwaved regret. Leftovers sound great. We sat on opposite ends of her desk with mismatched plastic containers between us. She offered me the last dumpling with a look that said don't argue. The silence wasn't awkward, more like something settling in. Then, mid-bite, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and didn't answer. Everything okay? I asked, mouth still full. She set the phone face down. Just someone I used to try with. That wasn't what I expected her to say. The rain got heavier outside. The lights in the shop buzzed faintly. I saw her staring into her tea, swirling it like it had answers. Can I ask you something? I said, quieter now. She looked up. Depends if I want to answer. I hesitated. Why do you always look like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop? That hit something. Her face didn't change, but her hands stilled. She let out a breath. Because it usually does. There was a pause. Not tense. Just real. I don't think that's true, I said. She looked at me again, this time fully. Something open in her gaze. Something that made me feel older than I was. You think you know a lot, she murmured. But you're still soft. I notice things. I know. The air felt different then. Heavy, not uncomfortable. Close. She reached across the desk to grab her mug, and her hand brushed the inside of my wrist. I didn't move. Neither did she. I swear I saw her glance at my mouth. Just for a second. And my hand, it moved. Just slightly. Toward hers. Halfway there. She stood. You should go now. I froze. Okay, I said, quieter than I meant to, and I did. But only my body left that room. I wasn't supposed to come by that night. She hadn't asked, and I didn't text. But I found myself outside the shop around 8, standing under the buzz of a flickering street lamp with no good reason to be there. The door was locked, but I saw light inside. I knocked once. Lena opened it a few seconds later, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back messily, like she'd given up trying to look like anything but tired. She didn't look surprised to see me, just quiet. I was in the neighborhood, I lied. She let the door fall open. That's not even remotely believable. But she turned and walked back inside. So I followed. The office was warm, smelled faintly of oranges and printer ink. The only sound was the small fan by her desk ticking unevenly as it turned. She sat, didn't offer me a chair this time. I stayed standing. We didn't talk for a while. I watched her sort receipts like they mattered. My jacket dripped quietly on the floor. Finally, I said, "This isn't nothing, right?" She stopped, didn't look up. "I mean this." I gestured vaguely to the space between us, to the air that had been slowly closing in for weeks. "Whatever's happening." Her hands were still on the desk, resting on the paper like they might tear through it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said softly. "You do." She looked up then, and for the first time I saw it, fear. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind that settles in the bones. "You're a kid," she said. "I'm not," I answered. "And we both know that. You're Aaron's friend. So this, whatever you're feeling or thinking, it's a moment. You'll outgrow it." I shook my head. "Don't tell me what I feel. You don't get to do that." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. The fan clicked off. The silence felt like a third person in the room. "You're lonely," I said gently now. "That's okay. So am I." She blinked, slowly. Her hands curled slightly inward. She didn't cry. Lena didn't seem like someone who ever let herself cry. I stepped forward, just enough to close the space a little. "We can't keep pretending this is normal. It's not." "No," she said, almost a whisper. "It's not." A long pause. "I don't know what we're doing," I admitted. "But I think about you all the time. And I think you know that." She didn't deny it. I didn't move any closer. Didn't touch her. Didn't dare. She looked at me. Eyes tired, guarded, full of something unsaid. And then she did the worst thing she could have. She didn't say anything. Just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. It was the sound that did it. She'd stepped out for a minute, said she needed to grab something from the back room, and her phone buzzed twice on the desk beside me. I didn't mean to look, but when a screen lights up right next to you, you glance. It's automatic. Voicemail received. James Hartley, 042. I stared at the name longer than I should have. Same last name. I hadn't heard much about her ex. Aaron only ever called him the guy who left. No details, no bitterness. Just emptiness, like even the resentment had been worn down. I didn't play the message. That would have crossed a line. But when she came back into the room, she saw the phone in my peripheral, and she stopped. "He still calls sometimes," she said quietly, not defensive, just resigned. "Never says much. Always late at night, like he forgets I changed." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. She walked past me, picked up the phone, and locked it with a quick tap. Then she sat, but didn't touch the papers on her desk or look at the screen. "He left 5 years ago," she said, eyes fixed on the wall now. "Walked out after dinner. No warning. Just said he couldn't do this anymore." I didn't even know what this meant. Her voice didn't shake, but her thumb rubbed the edge of her bracelet like she was tracing something only she could feel. "I didn't talk about it," she went on. "Not with Aaron. Not with anyone. Just kept moving. Pretended my spine didn't crack from it." I stood there, useless, the kind of still you fall into when words can only make things worse. "You remind me of someone," she said suddenly, quieter now. "But not him." She looked at me then. Really looked. You remind me of who I used to be. Before all of this. Before I got good at silence. I felt something hollow out in my chest. I didn't plan any of this, she said. Not with you. I swear. I know. You make me feel like I'm standing in a room that hasn't existed in years. We didn't move. The only sound was the low hum of the old air vent and the rain finally dying outside. She closed her eyes for a second, like her body was bracing for something worse than a confession. Something tender. Then she took a breath. Not a shaky one. Not forced. A breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. It didn't happen all at once. There was no grand moment. No dramatic kiss in the rain.
No sweeping soundtrack.
Just a quiet Tuesday, 2 chipped mugs between us, and the humming of the vending machine down the hall. I came by after hours again. No excuse this time. No accidental drop-in. I just walked in, and she looked up from her chair like she'd been expecting me. Even if she hadn't. You always show up when the world gets quiet, she said. I shrugged. That's when people say the things they mean. She didn't argue. We sat in silence for a while. I fixed the loose screw on her chair. She made a show of pretending not to care, but I caught the small tug of a smile when it stopped squeaking. Eventually, she asked, "Do you think this is stupid?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw everything she was trying not to show. The fear, the want, the history that kept her shoulders tense even when she was sitting still. No, I said. I think it's the only real thing in my life right now. Her fingers tightened around her mug. She stared into it like it held answers instead of weak coffee. I keep waiting to feel ashamed, she murmured. But I don't. I nodded. Same. She finally turned to face me.
No makeup.
A faint smudge of oil on her shirt sleeve. Tired eyes, but clearer than I'd ever seen them. I don't know how to do this, she said. I'm not built for soft things anymore. I reached out, slow, like the moment might scatter, and rested my hand on the table, palm up. No pressure.
No expectation.
Just space. She stared at it. And then, carefully, she placed her hand in mine. Her fingers were cool, her grip tentative. But she didn't let go. We sat like that, not speaking, not needing to. She leaned her head against the wall behind her, closed her eyes, and exhaled like she hadn't known she'd been holding her breath for years. And for the first time since all of this started, the air between us felt still. Not charged, not confusing, just honest. I turned slightly, rested my forehead gently against her shoulder. She didn't move. We didn't talk about the future, or what it meant, or how it would work. There would be questions later, complications. But in that moment, there was just this. A hand held, a wall leaned against, and 2 people too tired to keep pretending. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. People always ask me how it ended, but they're asking the wrong question, because it didn't end. It just shifted, quietly, like the way light changes through a window over the course of a day. That night in her office, the night she let me stay, let me in, that wasn't the start of anything dramatic. No overnight love story.
No scandal.
But something changed. After that, we didn't pretend anymore. We didn't hide in tasks or busy work. The website stayed broken longer than it needed to. We still met up after hours, sometimes just to talk. Sometimes not even that. We shared silences, the kind you earn. Lena stopped explaining herself. She didn't apologize for the tired in her eyes, or the quiet way she said goodbye, or how some days she held my hand without looking at me, like the contact was enough. I didn't need her to name what it was between us. I already knew. And me? I stopped chasing clarity like it owed me something. I used to think love meant certainty. Someone claiming you out loud, defining it, putting it in bold. But Lena never said the words. Not once. She just showed up. She stayed soft when she could have stayed safe. And that taught me more than any "I love you" ever could. I'm not with her now. Not because we broke, but because it was never meant to be forever, just real. She taught me how to listen, how to feel without demanding to be felt back in the same way. How sometimes the most honest kind of love is the one that never asks to be named. And I think that's what people miss. They're always waiting for the label, the Instagram caption, the clean narrative. But some connections, they exist outside of that. And they change you, quietly, permanently. I haven't seen Lena in almost a year, but there are still mornings I remember how she folded napkins when she was nervous. Or the way she'd lean against a wall with her arms crossed, trying to look unreadable, and always failing. And every now and then, I'll catch myself saying something in her cadence. Soft, dry, honest. She's still with me, not as a ghost or a regret, but as a reminder that love doesn't have to last forever to be worth it. Sometimes it just has to be real. And if you've ever had something like that, even for a second, you know what I mean?